This Sikha of Shabbos Parshas Yisro Chof Shvat Tafshin Nun Beis can be found in Sefer HaSichos Tafshin Nun Beis on page 331. Another part of this Farbrengen was also edited by the Rebbe together with the Sikha of Chof Beis Shvat and a kuntras known as B'chol Yivorech Yisrael, and hopefully Be'ezus Hashem will learn that Sikha as well in a separate recording. The Rebbe starts off the Sikha by saying that the Aseres HaDibros actually say twice in the Torah. So the first time it says it in our Parsha in Parshas Yisro, and the second time it says it in Sefer Mishnah Torah in Parshas Vo'eschanan. We need to understand the content, the idea of these two times saying the Aseres HaDibros. Since the Aseres HaDibros are such a fundamental thing in all of Torah, and they include all of Torah, Kol HaTorah Kula, we need to say that the twice that the Torah tells us about the Aseres HaDibros, the first set of Dibros in Parshas Yisro, the second set of Dibros in Parshas Vo'eschanan, it must be that they're bringing out two general ideas in Torah B'chlal. Especially, says the Rebbe, that there are a number of differences between the sets of the Dibros, the first set in Parshas Yisro and the second set in Parshas Vo'eschanan, as discussed and explained in Medrashei Chazal and in the Mefarshim. And the Rebbe says it makes sense to say that the individual differences of these two times are as a result of the general difference between these two sets of how they're recorded, as will be explained later. So the Rebbe says a general essential difference between the Dibros HaRishonos and the Dibros HaAcharonos, even very, very simply, is that the first set of Dibros, the way they're discussed in Parshas Yisro, is the way Hashem is telling them, saying them directly at Matan Torah, telling it to the Yidden. Vayidaber Elikim es kol advarim ha'ela leimer. Hashem is saying all of these words. Whereas the second set, the way they're described in Sefer Dvarim, are a part of Moshe Rabbeinu's words, as Moshe Rabbeinu is repeating and saying over in the 40th year in the Sefer Mishnah Torah, as the Sefer starts, Eila Hadvarim. These are the words that Moshe Rabbeinu said. Now, since both of these sets of Dibros are part of the eternal Torah, and Torah is also Melashon Hayra, it's always a directive and a lesson to us, so it's understood that these two ways of saying the Aseres HaDibros, the way Hashem is saying it, and the way it's being given over, the words of Hashem through Moshe Rabbeinu, clearly are found in all matters of Torah and in the Avodah of a Yid, in learning Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs generally, throughout all times. Especially, says the Rebbe, based on the words of Chazal, that Limud HaTorah always needs to be in a way that every day it's like brand new, as if it was the very, very first time. In fact, this is why we say Birchas HaTorah. When we say the bracha on the Torah, we say Noisein HaTorah. In the present tense, Hashem is giving us the Torah, because it's currently happening. And we say that Malahala, just like at the time of Matan Torah, we were standing there in awe and fear and trembling. Every single time we learn the Torah has to be in the same way. So therefore it's understood that both ways of the Aseres HaDibros, the way they were said, need to also apply in the Avodah of a Yid every single day. Says the Rebbe, we need to understand what is actually being added in the Dibros HaAcharonos in the second set of the Aseres HaDibros, the way they were said by Moshe Rabbeinu, compared to the way it's being said by Hashem himself, the way the Yidden heard it. Says the Rebbe, the explanation is, in Torah generally there are two levels. Number one, there's the Torah as it is on its own, in its own essence. As it's described, Chemda Genuza, this is the precious treasure that was hidden by Hashem even before the world was created. This is part of Hashem's will, Hashem's wisdom. Torah is one with the essence of Hashem, as the famous expression, Torah and Hashem are all one. That's step number one. Then there's Torah, the way it traveled down through all the many, many levels, through the Ishtalshlus, through the whole set of the realm of the different realms of the worlds, till finally entering and coming into the physical matters of this world, into our Gashmiistic world. By Matan Torah, the Torah was given to the Yidden, Dafka, down here specifically on our Gashmiistic earth, as we say, Torah loy b'shamayim, Torah is not in the heavens. So a Yid, as a neshama beguf, needs to learn Torah and paskin the shaylos according to their own understanding, according to their own seichel of a human being down here. And they're going to utilize Torah and mitzvahs to transform the Gashmiistic world and make it for a place for Hashem, a dir lo yizbarach b'tachtonim. Now, from these two different levels of the Torah, again, the way it's by Hashem and the way it comes down to us, then comes down also two ideas in how a Yid learns Torah. One aspect is the knowledge, the recognition that Torah is purely Hashem's will and wisdom, completely higher than the world, completely higher than the person's logic. Now this brings him to a feeling of bittul. That the person learning Torah has a bittul, he feels nullified to Hashem. And that before he's going to learn Torah, he's going to make the bracha, the birchas HaTorah, where we say Baruch Atah Hashem, recognizing, appreciating that Nasan Lanu is Torah, so that Hashem has given us His Torah. And in fact, in Torah Shebeksav, even if we don't understand a single word, we're still making that bracha, appreciating that these are Hashem's words. Furthermore, this bittul, this nullification that he has to have is to such an extent that he doesn't even feel himself as a separate entity at all. Rather, all he is here for is only to verbalize and to bring out the word of Hashem that's in Torah. As the pasuk says, Tan l'shoini imrasecha. That is, that the Torah is Hashem's words, and my tongue, my mouth is only repeating Hashem's words, ka'oina, like someone that's answering and repeating after someone that's saying something. In other words, that in addition to the fact that generally we know Chazal tell us that when a person learns, Hashem is sitting opposite him and learning. In other words, that your learning is causing kavayachol that Hashem should be learning, but there's something even more than that. That the words that you're saying are Hashem's words. Or as we say before Shemona Esrei, Hashem sefasai tiftach ufi yagiti losecha. This pasuk is saying that all we are saying, we're just repeating Hashem's words, the words that Hashem placed in our mouth. Similar to what it says about Moshe Rabbeinu, that Shechina medaberes, the Shechina spoke through his throat, through his mouth. And this is why Chazal tell us that just like by Matan Torah we were standing there in awe and fear and trembling, so too every single time we learn Torah. Because seemingly you might ask, how could you even compare? By Matan Torah, they were trembling, they were standing at Har Sinai, they saw all the koiles, they saw all the sounds, etc. And Hashem is speaking to them directly. When we're sitting and learning Torah every single day on our own, it seems to be not to be the same experience. But the truth of the matter is, because really every single time we learn Torah, at any given time, it's really the words of Hashem that were said to Moshe at Sinai, through Moshe at Sinai, as it says, Vayidaber Elokim Eskol Advarim Ha'ela, Hashem is the one saying all of these words. And by thinking of this itself will cause you to feel that awe and fear as if you're just receiving these words today at Har Sinai. So this is all one aspect in our Limud HaTorah. But then there's the second aspect, the knowledge that Torah was given down here onto this earth specifically to a Yid as an neshama beguf, and therefore this brings out within the person the idea that he needs to be learning Torah, he needs to be trying to understand it in his seichel, to make sure that he understands what he's learning in the Torah to the extent that the Torah of Hashem, which is called Hashem's Torah, and yet, as the Gemara puts it, ultimately it's Nekras al Shmai, it's called on the person's name. Torah Soy, it becomes your Torah. To the extent that we say that if a Rav, someone that learns Torah, is Moichel, forgoes on his honor is forgiven because now the Torah became his, he owns it, so to speak. He becomes like the Balabayis Kavayachal over the Torah. Says the Rebbe, from these two things, need to also come out two things in the ultimate purpose and goal of Torah and mitzvahs coming down into this world, which is of course the purpose of making a place for Hashem, a dira b'tachtonim, which is achieved through Torah and mitzvahs. And here again we have two ideas. Number one is that we're making a dira lo yizbarach, we're making a place for the essence of Hashem. And in order to do this, we need the Torah, because Torah and Hashem are all one, and that's going to help us bring about the revelation of the essence of Hashem here. But then, in order to have the Dira B'Tachtonim, we also need to have Tachtonim. We have to have that Metzias, that existence, that entity of a lowly world, and of a Yid, as a Neshama inside of a body, together with the Torah that came down here in the lowliest place, and is acting according to the ways of the world of Tachtonim, according to a physical, lowly world, so that now he could take this world and transform it. On the one hand, the world is remaining a world, it's remaining Tachtonim, and yet to make that into a place for Hashem by utilizing all of the different things of the world, the conduct of the world, the different definitions of the world itself, utilizing it according to the heroes of the Torah, making it a place for Hashem, a dira for Hashem. Says the Rebbe, as simply the idea of a dwelling place of a home is. In order to be able to make a dira in a certain place, and with certain things that Tachtonim, what we need to do is, the Rebbe is again quoting a Maimer Chazal where it says, Azlas lekarta, when you come to a city, when you come to a place. So that's number one, you need to come to the place. But furthermore, halach b'nei Musa, you need to act in the ways, in the manners of that particular place. In other words, you're settling in a place, that's the Azlas lekarta, you're going to a city. But furthermore, you're involved, you're investing yourself, you're clothing yourself, you're acting according to the ways of the place, according to the minhagim, the customs and the manners of the place. Only then could we say that you're really properly settled in this place, where now you could call it your home, your dira, by utilizing the aspects of that particular place in order to make that dira, in order to make that home, and to make it bigger and nicer, etc. Whereas, if you are not in the place, you're just somewhere else, or even within the place, but you're not acting according to the place, you're never really fully having your home there. So too in the Nimshal. In order to make a dira b'tachtoinim, the person cannot remain a neshama removed, a neshama up above. Rather, the yid together with the Torah needs to come down into the state of the tachtoinim, into the lowly world, and there act according to the world, according to the place, according to the tachtoinim, obviously according to the hirois of the Torah, and then utilizing the place itself, transforming it and making it a dira for Hashem. Says the Rebbe, this is if Vav we're up to right now, v'yesh loymar, that the koyach for both of these ideas, in other words, both in the area of limud HaTorah to have these two aspects that we discussed, as well as in making a dira b'tachtonim, come from these two sets of the dibros. The first set of dibros, where it's emphasized, vayedaber elikim, that Hashem is saying all of these words, that's giving the yid a koyach, that in all of Torah, he should have this bittul that it's all about the word of Hashem that's speaking through my mouth. And all I'm doing is just repeating Hashem's words. As explained regarding the word leimoir in this pasuk, it says, Vayedaber elikim es kol advarim ha'ela leimoir. Now usually leimoir means to repeat, to say over to someone else. But in this case, what does leimoir mean? Because in the Aseres HaDibros, all the Yidden heard directly from Hashem, those that were Yidden that were presently there, physically there, and those that weren't there, everyone ultimately was by Har Sinai, the neshamis of all the generations, and even the Geirim. So what does it mean, lamer, to say it over to who? So Chassidus explains that when it says lamer, vayidaber elikim is called advarim ha'ela lamer, it means that a Yid is given the koyach in all generations, that when we learn Torah, and all matters of Torah, which are included in vayidaber elikim is called advarim ha'ela, should be in a way that we are set, whenever we learn Torah, we're saying something that was said already. Meaning to say that when a Yid is saying, it's not his own words, rather he's repeating Hashem's words, and the words that were said over to Moshe Misinai. Like we said before, Tan, L'shoini, my words, my mouth, my tongue is only repeating Hashem's words. So that's all, the first set of the Aseres HaDibros. The second set, the way it's said by Moshe Rabbeinu, and Chumash Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu, that's called a Mamutza HaMachaber, that intermediary that connects between Hashem and us. Because Moshe Rabbeinu himself is a Isha Elikim, a godly person, as he's a neshama down here in the physical body. So this gives the Yid the koyach, that as he is a neshama beguf, he should be able to have the koyach, especially through the Moshe Rabbeinu inside of him, to be able to learn Torah with that understanding, and with the seichel, with the intellect of a person down here below. So too when it comes to the avodah of making a dira lo yizbarach b'tachtoinim, both in regards to the Yid himself, because we know that the main inyan of dira b'tachtoinim first and foremost starts within the Yid himself, to make that the Yidden should be a place for Hashem to be able to dwell there. So we know that Yisrael, Yidden and Hashem are all one, and therefore the Yidden are really the ultimate dira for the essence of Hashem, because they are kvayochel one with Hashem, but it's revealed through their avodah when they deal with the lowly world. And then, after making himself a dira, there's also about making the dira b'tachtoinim, having the koyach to achieve this in the world. So therefore, here again we have these two ideas. Number one, similar to the concept of ayedaber elikim is called advarim ha'ela leimoir, like from the first set of luchos, from the first set of the Aseres HaDibros, That's giving the koyach to make the dira for the essence of Hashem. And then when Moshe Rabbeinu says over the Aseres HaDibros, that's giving the koyach, that we should be able to accomplish this in the tachtoinim, in other words, according to their own definitions and limitations, since Moshe is someone that's found down here in this world, like we quoted before, Azlis Lakarta, you go to a place and you act according to the place. Says the Rebbe in Seif Zayin, the reason why we need to have these two sets of dibros, the way it's said the first time and the second time, is because really each one of these has its own unique advantage. The mile of the advantage of Ayedaber Elikim, the way Hashem says it, this is because the revelation and the hamshacha, the drawing down of the dibros, of the very essence of Hashem, is coming down in a direct way without any intermediaries. Not even Moshe Rabbeinu, who's called an Isha Elikim. Now, even though, of course, Moshe is called a Mamutza Machaber, intermediary that connects and is giving over the words of Hashem, that the words of Hashem are just flowing directly through his mouth, through his throat, without even having any self-feeling at all. It's literally just the words of Hashem coming out. It's called B'derech Maiver. It's just like passing through. It's not even being changed when it comes into Moshe Rabbeinu. Nevertheless, the bottom line is, even this Maiver is having some sort of effect. And that's why we need Moshe. It wasn't able to come. Hashem Yidden weren't able to receive it directly from Hashem. The actual fact that we're saying it's going through Moshe, that means it's having some form of an impact. So even though it's only B'derech Maiver, it's only passing through, but it's already achieving that the Yidden should be able to accept it. So the idea, the chidush, the idea of Vayedaber Elokim is called Dvar Ma'ela is about that all Yidden hear directly from Hashem without any sort of intermediary. Nevertheless, says the Rebbe, the way the Yidden are hearing the words from Hashem is mainly through bittul. Bittul, in other words, you're losing your whole complete identity and mitzias. And as actually happened at that time, that every word that Hashem spoke on every one of the dibros, their neshamas flew out. And Hashem needed to revive them with the tal, with the dew that he's going to resurrect the dead. He had to be mechayim esim them. And this is why Yidden needed, when it came to the other dibros after Anochi lo yiyelecha, that Moshe should tell it to them, Moshe should give it over. So that's on the one hand the intense power of the first set of dibros. On the other hand, the milos of the way the dibros acharonis that Moshe Rabbeinu gives over is that the word of Hashem is now coming down into a level that's more be'erich to the Yid. In other words, within their mitzias itself, they're able to accept it in a pnimius, not in a way that they have to become completely bottled, completely nullified and gone. However, this is because the Gilu that's coming through Moshe Rabbeinu is already coming with somewhat of a change. It's not Kavayochel, that same intense Gilu, as coming from Hashem himself. To put it in the same language or the same style of the concept of making a dira for Hashem, a dira b'tachtoinim, in the dibros harishonos, in the first set of dibros, what's more revealed is the fact that it's a dira lo yizbarech. The focus is more on the fact that it's Hashem's revelation. It's not so much about the tachtoinim. On the other hand, in the dibros acharoinos, what's more being focused on or emphasized is the tachtoinim. But on the other hand, you don't have that same high level of dira lo yizbarech, of the essence of Hashem. More specifically, says the Rebbe, even in the words dira lo yizbarech itself, you could say there's two ways or two levels. As it's accomplished through Moshe in the second set of dibros, or as it's being said through Hashem by Yedaber Elikim in the dibros rishonos. What does this mean? So number one, says the Rebbe, even when we're making a dira lo yizbarech down here in this world, but the Rebbe says, what does dira lo yizbarech mean? We're still not speaking about the essence of Hashem himself, the one who's living there, so to speak. It's a dira for him. It's not him. So the Rebbe says, the Vayedaber Elikim is still as it's. So this is all. In other words, it's not Vayedaber Elikim itself. It's rather the Dvar Hashem coming through Moshe Rabbeinu and the Dibros Acharonos. The Rebbe says we see this in a dira in the simple sense. That is, that even though in a dira clearly the person that's living there is standing there revealed with his whole essence, nevertheless, the house or the home is not part of the person. There's still two separate things. There's the person and the house. And so too in the Nimshal, when we speak about dira lo yizbarech, since the point is to make it bitachtoinim down here in this world, as the world is a world, and in fact, the whole point of the dira, as we said before, is being made up by the gedorim, by the manners, by the customs of the tachtoinim. When you go to a place, you have to act according to the place. So even when we finally make the dira lo yizbarech b'tachtoinim, and even a dira for the essence of Hashem, where Hashem himself is standing begilu, but ultimately there's still two separate things. You're having there's the tachtoinim, the state of the tachtoinim, and they are in that way tachtoinim, meaning because there's a concealment, the godliness is completely hidden and concealed over there, and they are now becoming a dira for Hashem, but still a separate mitzias from Hashem, from the one that's going to live there. The very essence of Hashem, because again, even though the whole chiddush is that even the tachtoinim are becoming a dira for Hashem, but it's still Atzmus Muhus, it's not the way it's in its very, very essence itself. It's already becoming, there's still two separate things. Says the Rebbe, this is still all part of way number one. Via Shloimar, that this way of making a dira b'tachtoinim is that which is accomplished through Moshe Rabbeinu, the Mamutza Machaber on its own. This is similar more the idea of the Dibros Acharonos, that the words of Hashem, but ultimately it's still coming through Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, it's still somewhat be'erach to the tachtoinim. It's not the gilui of the one living there himself. Now we come to step number 2. That in addition to dira lo yizborech and atzmus muhus, himself standing begili b'chol atzmusay v'yidaber elikim is called Dvar leimor. There's more the idea of the essence of Hashem himself, not only revealed in something else, but Hashem himself is completely revealed in his whole essence, as it is in the Dibros Rishonos. Now says the Rebbe, obviously the Tachlis HaShleimus is when we can combine these two things together. On the one hand, having the gili literally of the atzmus mehusay, Soif Baruch Hu ba'atzmusay mehusay, not only the way it's coming down through the Memutza Machaber through Moshe Rabbeinu, and yet coming down to the Yidden as they are neshamis begufim, and accepting all of this in their pnimius, and not by just completely becoming nullified. In other words, that the dira b'tachtoinim itself is not in a way that it's becoming, the dira is not just becoming bottle, it's becoming that it's gone, but rather it's becoming a channel for the gili of the Dvar Hashem Mamish of Atzmus Musi Yisbarech, the one who is living there, the very, very essence of Hashem. And how does that happen? When a Yid is learning Torah down here in a way, as we said, Tan l'shoyim rosecha, that all he is just a channel for the gili of the essence of Hashem, in a way that the dira itself, in other words, the Yid himself, as he's betachtoinim, is expressing and revealing the words of Hashem, Tan l'shoyim rosecha, to the extent that the Yid himself is now one with Hashem, and that's the gili down here of Yisro, the Kudsha B'richu, that Yid and Hashem are all one. With this koyach, the Yid then goes and achieves the same thing within the world. That the Metzias of the world itself, of the Tachtoinim, are not only a dira, a dwelling place as a separate Metzias from the one living inside it, but rather that the whole world is only about revealing the word of Hashem. In other words, it's the gili of the koyach ha'atzmus that's found in the world, because it's only the essence of Hashem himself that could create something out of nothing. Says the Rebbe, the reason why we need to have these two sets of dibros, even though the dibros are rishonos that the Hashem himself is speaking, is shaloi berach higher than the second set that's coming through Moshe Rabbeinu, is because when Moshe Rabbeinu says this second set of dibros in a way of leimor, he's giving over the words of Hashem mamish. That's going to accomplish, that's going to achieve that a Yid, even as he's down here lamata b'tachtoinim, to use the expression we said before, afkan, even when he's learning Torah now, should be able to accept in the Geder, in the definitions of the Tachtoinim, and be able to accomplish through their Limud HaTorah and avoid down here that Gilui of Ayedaber Elikim, the Dvar Hashem Mamish, which was at Matan Torah. In other words, that through the Dibrei Sacharoinis and Parshas Ve'eschanan, that's really revealing the Shleimus HaMayla of the Dibrei Sarishonis and Parshas Yisro. That is, the Gilui of Ayedaber Elikim in the Lamer, inside every single Yid, in the Tachtoinim, that the learning Torah of a Yid in every single time, in every single place, right now, is the word of Hashem Mamish, as it was said L'Moshe Sinai, and that accomplishes that then when we learn Torah, that just like we were standing there in awe and fear and trembling, etc., like B'matan Torah, we're exactly the same now as well. Says the Rebbe in Sif Tes, according to all of this, we could also explain the connection of the time when we read Parshas Yisro this year on the 21st, Be'esrim B'chodesh, on the 20th day. This is Chav Shvat, and Rebbe is saying the Sikha of the 11th month. Shvat being the 11th month. Ashtei Asar Chodesh is Chodesh Shvat, which is 10 days, says the Rebbe, after Yud Shvat, the Yom Hilula of Kavod Kedushas Meir V'chami Admuna Siderenu. It's also the Shabbos from which the following week gets its bracha, the coming days of Shvat, including Chav Beis Shvat, which is the Yom Hilula of the daughter of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Says the Rebbe, the 11th month, Shvat, is connected with a Gilui that's described in the Torah of the Achad Asar Yomei Chodesh. The Torah describes Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to the Yidden, it's 11 days since Har Sinai. Now, Chassidus explains that 11 means Miyuchad Shabbat Asar. In other words, it's the one. There could be one that's before, that's a number 11 could sometimes be understood that it's outside of the 10, but it's also, in other words, it's one that's on the one hand part of the Aseret HaDibros, but uniquely standing by itself. One that's greater than all of them could also sometimes be called this Achad Asar. So this is referring to Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. The Achad Asar Yomi Chodesh, in other words, is referring to this Darga of 11, which is completely higher than the Aseret HaDibros as they were giving at Har Sinai B'Chodesh, or to use the language we say in Pasach Elio, Antu Chad V'Lo B'Chushbon. We have the 10 Sfiros, and then you have the one that's beyond it all, the level of Kesed that's higher than the 10 Spheros. And furthermore, the very essence of Hashem that's completely higher than Seder Ishtashlos. That's what's represented by the number 11. So this is the 11th month. Within the 11th month itself, the Yom Lula of Kvoit Kedushas Meir V'chami Admor, the Yom Lula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, as we know, is in the 10th day. That means is the Gilui of, on the one hand, Achadosar, the month is the 11th, but it's also connected with the day of 10, which represents Seder Ishtalshalos. In addition to the fact that Achad Osar on its own really includes, obviously, the previous 10, there's also this idea of the 11 along with 10, the 10th day of Shvat. Generally, this represents the idea of drawing down the koiches makifim, those higher, all-encompassing levels, which is level of Keser, but to bring it down also in the inner faculties. Or even furthermore than that, bringing down the very essence of Hashem, bitachtoinim. Like the idea that we discussed, bringing down the Dibris Harishonis, combining it with the Dibris Acharonis. Says the Rebbe, this comes out even in a greater way in the 11th day of the 11th month, which then we have the Gilui of the number 11, both as far as the months are concerned, as well as far as the days are concerned. The Rebbe says, as this was discussed in another Sikha, via Shloimar, that since it's coming after the 10th day, the 11th day of the month is coming after the 10th day of the month, so therefore we have the Mila, we have the advantage, first of all, of drawing it down in a Pnimius by number 10, but then, since Mila in B'Kodesh, we then move on to the number 11, even in the days of the month, besides being, of course, the 11th month. Says the Rebbe, via Shloimar, this is similar to the Mila and the Chidush of the saying of the Dibris Harishonos through Hashem, which again is on the level of the Achados, the one that's higher than the 10, after we have already the saying of the Dibris Acharonos through Moshe, which is the level of 10. The Rebbe says especially when Shabbos Parshas Yisro, when we read the whole Sedra in the Torah, including the Aseres HaDibris, Vaydaber, Lekim Eskol Advarim, Mo'ela Leimer, and we say a bracha before it and a bracha after it. And as we said, that then Hashem stands in front of us and says the words of Torah together with us in even a greater way than when we're learning the Torah throughout the year. So it says the Rebbe, this comes out even more so when we have the Esrim B'Chodesh, the 20th day of the month, as that Shabbos was in the 11th month, because the Esrim, the word Esrim is 20, but the word Esrim is also Begematria, the Keser, which is 620. In other words, so Esrim would then be Keser. And the 11th month again is Keser. So in other words, it's the level of Keser, or Achados, or Sheba Achados, or the Keser within the Keser, within the 11th. Says that from there, we move on from the 20th day, we move on to the 21st day of the month. Now we have a pasuk, Ach Toiv li Yisrael, only good for the Jewish people. Ach is 21. So we have Achados or Yom, this is the day of 21, is 11 days from Yud Shvat, from the 10th day of the 11th month. Furthermore, this is Erev Chav Beis Shvat. Now Chav Beis is going to be double Achadosar, and it's also hinted in the pasuk, Becha Yivarech Yisrael, through you, Yidden will be blessed. The word Becha is 22, corresponding to the 22 letters of the Torah, through which all of the brachas are coming down into the Yid Becha in Epinemius. Says the Rebbe in Sif Yud V'yesh Lo'isiv, the connection also with Parshas Mishpatim, which we're starting to read at Mincha, and is the Parsha of the coming days, including Chav Beis Shvat. On Ve'ela HaMishpatim, Asher Tasim Lefneim Chazal say, that just like the previous ones, the original ones, were from Har Sinai, in other words, the Aseres HaDibros, Af Elu, so too these Mishpatim were also given from Sinai. In other words, that also those mitzvahs that seem to be rational, logical, the Mishpatim are also, which are connected with Gidriyat Achtoinim, with the world, are really from Sinai, from the very, very essence of Hashem. Vayedaber Elikim, just like the Rishonim are Sinai. Or like we said before, that just like when we learn Torah now, it needs to be with awe and fear, like by Matan Torah. Says the Rebbe, all of this comes out in a revealed way. How does the pasuk start off? Ve'ela ha-mishpatim. Ve'ela is like you can point with your finger and say, here it is. And furthermore, tasim lefneim. We put it down. Ve'ela mishpatim tasim lefneim. We should put it down in front of them. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, don't think that I could just teach them the Perek and the Halacha 2 or 3 times, and I won't bother to really explain it to them properly with all the Perushim. So no, tasim lefneim, you have to really give it to them. Especially that we said before, Torah is really in essence higher than understanding. So no, Hashem says, Tasim Lefneim. You have to make it Keshulchan Aruch, like a set table, ready to eat for the person. In other words, that even all of the explanations and the reasons need to come inside into the Yid, and they should become in a pnimius, like a table that's set in front of the person to eat, When you eat, it becomes part of your flesh and blood going into a pneumius. Says the Rebbe Ola Hoysef, according to what the Yerushalmi says, on the word Tosim, Yerushalmi says the word Tosim is the word Simo, which means a treasure. That even the deepest treasures of the Torah, the pneumius HaTorah, those things that are on its own, are completely hidden and are connected to the hidden part of Hashem. They too need to come down in the way of Tosim Lufneim, bringing down into a pneumius Begili. Says the Rebbe in Sifid Aleph, according to all of this, we can understand the lesson that we have right now, especially the current time when we're holding so close to the Geula HaMitis Vashleim, as we discussed many times, from the concept of Malhal, and just like by Matan Torah we had to stand in awe and fear, so too now we learn that in every single generation, in every single time, in every single place, Yidden have the koyach to accomplish Vayidaber Likim is called Dvar Lemer, just like it was by Matan Torah the first time. And this koyach we take from the chibur, from that connection of the Dibri Sarishonis, which come directly from Hashem. The Dibri Sacharonis that come through Moshe, as we discussed at length. And so too is true, this repeats itself constantly, as it's known that the inyan of Matan Torah is a constant thing. As mentioned before, we say in Birchas HaTorah, Noisen HaTorah, in the present tense. And so too, in every single generation, we have the Moshe Shabbatar, which gives over the words of Hashem, the Torah. So from all of this, we understand that in every single generation, these matters are repeated. And in even a greater way, because we have the concept of Mailan B'Kodesh. So it's repeated, this chibur, this connection between the first set of dibros and the second set of dibros, which gives the koyach that we should be able to constantly be in this state of awe and fear, with that Gilui of Ayedaber Elohim. Says the Rebbe, how much more so in our generation, where we see Begil, we see in an open way that the Moshe Shebedereinu, Kvoit Kedushas Meir V'Cham Yad Munasi Dereinu, is connected with this Gilui, with this revelation, this combination, this connection of the levels, as we explained before, the 10, number 10 and number 11. And furthermore, as we said, the Achados or Sheba Achados, as we explained, and therefore it shows even more on this connection that Afkan right now is all connected with Malhal to the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Rebbe, this is even more emphasized because our generation is the very, very last generation of the Golus and the first generation of the Gula, especially in the most recent time, as we discussed many times, that we completed everything already. And now all we need is just that there should be the Geula B'Poil, the Gilui, of this level of Asiri. We know that when Mashiach is going to come, there's going to be the 10th song and other inyanim associated with the number 10. But along with the Gili of the number 11, that level of Antu Chadway, the Eibishter, is higher than the 10. The Gili of the very essence of Hashem down here. Which is connected with Moshe Rabbeinu, as we know that Goyal Rishon, who Goyal Achrein. Says the Rebbe, especially based on what we discussed a number of times, the Rosh Tevis, that we could possibly say on the word Miyad. Miyad is a Rosh Tevis, Moshe, Yisroel, referring to the Baal Shem Tov, and Daled David Malka Mashiach. That means that the first generation of Matan Torah, the generation of Moshe, is connected to the last generation, the one of the Geula through David Malka Mashiach, and they are connected through the Gilui Achsidus of the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Seinu Nesienu, Memali Mekoyim, because when we spread the Chassidus to the outside, as we know, that's when Mashiach is going to come. Says the Rebbe via Shlomo, we could say that in accordance to this toichen of the word miyad, which means immediately, we have to say that the three letters are connected not only with three completely different times, Moshe in his generation, and Yisroel Baal Shem Tov in his generation, and then David Malka Mashiach in his generation, but rather they also all come together, mamish, miyad, in every single generation and in every single time. As hinted in the word miyad, even going back to the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, that you could say miyad is also a Rosh Tevis of Moshe, Yehoshua, and Doiram, their generation. It means because all three things are coming together in one time, in one generation. Says the Rebbe the same thing we can apply to our generation. That within the same generation we have the Gili of all three. The Mem standing for Mashiach, and as the Rebbe points out in the footnote, whose name is also with a Mem, Menachem. Yud is the Rosh Tevis of both names of the Friedrich Rebbe, and Dalid refers to Doiram, their generation. Of course, along with the Moshe Shabbadereinu, Kvoit Kedush Meir V'Cham Yad Munasi Dereinu, which is again the level of the Eser, the Asiri B'Shvat, but also including the Gili of Toras Achsidus, this well springs of the Baal Shem Tov through him. So then we have also the Gili of the Achadosar, the Goyal Rishon, who Goyal Achrein, because the generation of David Malka Mashiach. Says the Rebbe via Shloimar, that these three ideas are similar to the three things we said before in regards to the Dibros Harishonos that we said. You have the fact that it's coming from Hashem himself. Similarly, you have the idea of the Gili of the Sosim and Pnimius HaTorah, the inner parts of the Torah, starting through Yisro la Baal Shem Tov. And you have on the other hand, you have the Dibris Acharonis through Moshe. And then finally, we have the chibur of these two ideas together, which is like the idea of Eser and Achados are coming together, as will be b'shleimus through the Gili of Torah Chadash Miti Teitzei, which is again like the idea of Achad Asar Yom Chayrev. It's the idea of something higher than the Aseres HaDibros that were given from Chayrev, coming from the very essence of Hashem, which is higher than Moshe that Mamutza Mechaber, the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima de Mashiach Tzidkenu. Says the Rebbe in Sif Yud Beis, a practical lesson from all of this for each and every Yid, Kol Echad V'Achas MiYisrael, man or woman. Men, women, and children, especially in our generation. Standing in Shabbos Parshas Yisro, when we read the Torah, the Parsha of Matan Torah, coming from Asiri B'Shvat in the 11th month, and preparing for Chav Beis Shvat, which is double 11. Every single Yid needs to take the Hoirah, Vayidaber Elokim Es Kol HaDvarim Ha'elu Leimer, which was said, B'Loshen Noichach, and B'Loshen Yachid. That means it's being said in singular and in present tense, speaking to someone directly. Anoichi Hashem, I am your Elokecha, I took you out of Mitzrayim. In order to learn a lesson and a command to each and every one of us, to each and every one as an individual. And that is, that just like by Matan Torah, together with the fact that it was a one-time thing, but it has a hashpah on all future times, in a way of, as we said before, we have to stand now with the same awe and fear as then. So too now, when we learn this parsha in the Torah, we have to take our achlotas toivos practically for this, for all coming days and weeks and months, especially in connection to the concept of number 10 and number 11, as we mentioned. And that is, just like by Matan Torah, all Yidden got together in a way of Vayichan Sham Yisrael K'ish Echad B'Leiv Echad. So too there has to be the avoid of the Yid now. Every single Yid has to get together, first of all, his own 10 koichas hanefesh, his own 10 faculties. Make out of them one tzibur, one congregation that all together are serving Hashem. Both with his inner 10 koichas, which are the 3 levels of intellect and 7 emotional character traits, and so too with his koichas makifim, with the ones that are more encompassing and higher than his koichas. That's number 11, which is the levels of rotzen and tainug, which is the will and pleasure. As we say, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafscha, b'chol moedecha. First and foremost, says the Rebbe, to add in limud ha-Torah, be'ema, be'yira, be'resa, b'ziyah, learning it with awe and fear, knowing that we're learning the Torah, this is our own 10 koichas, we're learning it according, on the one hand, our own faculties, our own koichas hanefesh, but at the same time, this is Hashem's words that were said L'Moshe Sinai. V'oid v'ikar. Every single person should accept upon himself to be mashpia in the very next days, on at least another 10 Yidden in all matters of Torah and mitzvahs. And do this also with all your koiches, with your koiches pnimim and koiches makifim. And has said that this is oiraf in each and every Yid of our generation, men, women, and children. Including, says the Rebbe specifically, and starting with those that are right here, right now in the Beis HaKnesses, in the Beis HaMedrash, and Beis Maisim Tovim of Kvoit Kedush Meir V'chami Admunis Siderenu, the one that's called the Mikdash Ma'at, the Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel. This is the place, that's the Beis Chayenu, the house of our life, of all Yidden that are found in this place, and of all the Yidden of the whole generation, because Hanossi Hu HaKoil. From him comes the Hashpos HaChayis to the whole generation, and for all the people in all parts of the world. And therefore it's understood that his shul, his Beis Medrash, and his Beis Maisim Tovim is called Beis Chayenu. It's the house of all of our life, especially through the Hashpah of Torah's Chayim and Mitzvahs, regarding which it says, V'chai bohem, you live with them, Ki heim Chayenu v'oirach yameinu. And through this, that all Yidden that are here show this living example, how we need to act according to the heroes of Nasidir Reinu. So then the Hashpah and the Chayus comes from this place, from this house, especially when we're adding now and trying to improve and renovate and make this house better as much as possible in Olam Hazah Tachten. So the Hashpah goes to all the rest of the Yidden and the rest of the world, and ultimately to the whole world. The taker from Yad Mamish, the Gula Mitzvah Shlema comes from Poyol Mamish. And the Diz Beis HaKnesses, Diz Beis HaMedrash, and Beis Maisim Tovim, together with all Shuls and Batim Medrash and Batim Maisim Tovim, are go up together with all the Yidden, with our younger, with our old, with our sons and our daughters, to Eretz HaKodesh, to Yerushalayim HaIr HaKodesh, to Har HaKodesh, to Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, V'HaMeshulosh, and take it from Yad with all the Mamish, with all the Pirushim in this, starting with the simple Pirush, that literally right now Mamish.